On this episode of RC Kicks, we're back working on the Tamiya Super Clod. Now, if you haven't seen already, I did a whole build series on the Super Clod where we built up a stock one and then we modded it, swapped out the chassis, did loads of servo and steering upgrades and all kinds of fun stuff, and you guys and girls seem to really like it. So I thought this time I'll take a truckload of cash, throw it at the wall and see if we can build the ultimate Clod. And let's have a look at what I spent all my money on. Hit it, Charlie. Yes, I sold off my other Clod, but I've taken that money and I pumped it into this build as we're really going to dial it up to 11. There's some things on the old Clod that I would have done differently, so now I get the opportunity to try again and see if I can really knock it out of the park. So this is my Franken Clod. This is all the bits and pieces that I had floating around from the last project. Now, believe it or not, with most Clod builds, if you start modding them, you end up throwing away probably about 85% of the original Clod. And that's what you see here, as well as a few bits and pieces I'd picked up cheap off of eBay. The main thing you really need is the front and rear axles. Everything else kind of gets sort of swapped out, and obviously the body if you want to keep the original look. What I've got from here is the two axles, the front and rear axles. So I've got to dismantle them, clean them all up, because these are used axles. I did manage to pick up some new covers, so we're going to make them look super spiffy. So when I dismantle them to service them and fit bearings, I'm not sure if these have got bearings, we can actually make them look lovely and pretty as well. The electronic speed controller I've got is a dual brushed system. That's perfect. You don't need tons of power in these. On the last project I did, it was plenty powerful enough with two sports tuned or torque tuned motors. In the last Clod build, I actually fitted a Razor chassis from ukmonsters.co.uk, the Clod Shop, and I was super chuffed with it. I must admit the quality was beautiful and a lot of you really liked it as well. So I went back to them again and I said, hey, what can I get that's top of the line? And that was this, the Race 2.0 that replaces the Race 1.0. As you can see, absolutely beautiful. Now, they offer a whole range of these chassis. There is the V Chassis Sport, V Chassis Pro, there's the Razor 2.0, which replaced the one that I had in my previous build, and then this is the new one that replaces the Race 1.0, like I said. Now, they all have different price points and different strengths and weaknesses. This being the Race one, it's super light, but it's not as strong as like the V Chassis Pro or the V Chassis Sport. So it depends what you're doing. Now, I must admit, when I jumped around and I really bashed the Razor, it stood up quite well considering my driving's terrible. But this is not as strong as that, but it's absolutely beautiful and I wanted to just really go to town. A massive shout out to Ryan for throwing in the shocks. Thank you very much, that's really kind of you. I think it's because the ones I used on the Razor weren't the right length, so I think he saw the video and he was like, what is he doing? So massive thanks to him. Now, it's not just chassis, they do tons of other bits and pieces. So if you've got a standard Clod, you can do lots of upgrades to that, like the steering, the stiffness of the chassis, changing all the links. They do lots of different options, but you can then also later day upgrade to a whole chassis swap. So it depends on how you want to do it. A lot of people like to get the Clod and then just modify it but keep the actual chassis, because to be fair, once you start swapping out the chassis and all the bits and pieces, you kind of do lose a lot of the Clod and you only got the axles left. So if you want to take a older Clod and you just want to improve the steering, you can, and the stiffness of the chassis, you can as well. So I'll put a link in the description, go check it out. I paid for this with my own money because his stuff is just so beautiful. So go check him out, I can highly recommend him, and a massive thanks for him to just put so much time and effort into these. But it's not just the chassis, there is tons of other option parts that you need, like these. I just wanted to take 2 seconds to say a massive thank you to all the RCKicks Patreons who help contribute to make this channel possible. Now, there's probably quite a few of you that don't realise that I do this 24/7. This is my full-time job, trying to bring you RC content. Now, as you can imagine, that gets very expensive, buying in the latest and greatest kits, as well as my time and studios, cameras, lighting, electricity, and all kinds of bits and pieces. So if you can, please head over to the RCKicks Patreon page, as every single penny goes into the show and allows me to bring more content to you. Thanks very much. Back on with the show. So if you want to do a chassis swap, there is a few extra bits and pieces that you will need. Some are options and some are ones that you definitely need. Now, to make it a little bit more confusing, it depends on the chassis that you go with, has an effect on some of the options that are available to you or not. So the best thing to do if you're not sure is to reach out to them, and they will go through all the options with you, like they did with me when I first looked into this, because it can be a little bit confusing. So the first one I've got is wheel wideners. That pushes the wheels further out from the center of the chassis. I had these on my Razor and I left them on there when I sold it, and the reason I did that was when you have the full articulation, you don't want the tires rubbing on the chassis at all, especially on full lock. So that easily fixes that problem, and it's done so well that it doesn't actually add too much extra loading to the axles themselves. So that's definitely one I would recommend. Also, from a look point of view, it looks so much better. Next is one that you have to have, well, for this chassis anyway, and a few of the others, but not all of them, and that is the top link mounts. This is where the axle is bolted to this, and then the links go onto that, which is what you can see here with these links out here. So these attached to that. For this, you have to have those. Now, there is many options when it comes to steering. You can do lots of things like lock out the back. You can have on servo mounts. You can have bars, or you can have on this type of chassis, you can have these, which are BTA steering kits with bearings. Now, what I like about these is it positions the servo in a different place, behind the axle, not right in front. When I had the setup before, it puts the servo right at the front, which can be a little bit vulnerable. On this one, you actually can have it off to the side, which means that the steering sits behind the axle, which I like, and it gives it a cleaner look as well. So you have 2 of those, and you get the servo mount in there as well, and a carbon plate that sits around the back. So I really like those. That's a nice upgrade from the Razor 1 that I've got. Then on the other side of the axle, you can get a brace. So that's an axle brace. Now, this works well with this because it's basically one side is the servo mount, and then the brace works well on the other side, and it braces the axle all the way across. Now, if you've got a Razor chassis or a Razor 2 chassis, you can fit 2 of these, and then it braces it that way. So some things mix and match and other things don't. Like you can't use these on a Razor, as far as I know. The next thing is these. These are the 2.0 high body mounts. So on this kit, you have these mounts here, which actually where the body clips into. Now, if I want to raise it up higher, that's what these carbon parts do. It offsets the mounts to be a little bit higher, so I can have the whole body sitting higher if I like. Honestly, I don't know at the moment. I'll see how it looks once I've got all the wheels on it and all the running gear done, and then I've got the body lined up and we can figure it out. I don't like it too high personally, but obviously I want it to clear, so we'll see whether I'll actually end up needing this or not. There is one other part that I did need, which I don't have here, is on the ends of the axles. There is little tiny carbon mounts you can get to strengthen the ends of the axles with the hubs. I've placed an order for those. By the time we get around to building this, they'll be here. So that pretty much covers the whole chassis and all the options I'm going to fit. The other side of it is the more fun side, and that's the body. So I managed to pick up this about a month or so ago. This is the J Concepts JC0381 1982 T2 GMC K10, and you've got quite a few options on things like the grill and the light options are available, but you do get some window masks as well, which is really nice. It kind of is a bit Clod style, so I'm kind of happy with it. I may even put some Clod decals on it. We'll see. Maybe that'd be a good idea to paint it up like a Clod, even though it is the polycarbonate body, which is a lot lighter. The only other things is I kept my servos because these are just too good to let go. I was lucky enough to get these. These are Reef RC Raw 500s, and probably the best servos you can get for something like this. Crazy fast, crazy strong, but yes, they are quite expensive. So I didn't want to let them go when I sold my Clod, because I knew I was going to use them again. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers everything, so please hit that bell notification, as when all these videos come out, you don't want to miss them. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.